And that's a Sharpie.
What is my favorite animal gag from the whole 6 seasons of the show? It's impossible to pick one. One that comes to mind, which is actually written in the script, that I think about a lot because I'm very proud of it, was there's an episode where a ferret is talking to Henry Winkler at a funeral and being very inappropriate for the funeral. And Henry Winkler kind of shuts her down and says, "I'll let you get back to your business," and gestures to a group of other ferrets. And a group of ferrets is called a business of ferrets. That is a joke that delights me, because I think it's something you might not notice on first watch if you don't happen to possess that piece of trivia.
Mostly I just sit around the house and complain about things.
Yeah? How's that working out for you?
I can't complain, so.
It first started because I was friends with Lisa Hanawalt, who is a brilliant artist. We went to high school together, and we would joke about, one day we're going to make a cartoon together, and we had various terrible ideas. But I always had wanted to work with her on stuff. And then she went to UCLA, and I went to New York for college, but we stayed in touch. And then we kind of switched places. She moved to New York, and then I moved down to LA. And I started pitching shows. You do a lot of meetings here in Hollywood, and it's like, "Oh, you got any ideas?" "Yeah, I got some ideas. We'd love to hear them. Here they are." "Okay, well, let us know if you have any ideas." "I just told you all my ideas. What happened?" So I came up with like 3 to 5 ideas. And I sometimes think about what direction my life would take if we'd gone with one of the other ideas instead of BoJack Horseman. So I wanted to do a family comedy set during the Reign of Terror in France, where the dad was a guillotine salesman, and business was booming, but he couldn't get his wacky family in order. So that was one idea I had. It was gonna be kind of like All in the Family, but like in France. And his kids were gonna be revolutionaries, and like the ghost of Marie Antoinette was gonna be living in their attic. I think it was gonna be called The Good Times Are Killing Me, I think was the idea, because the guillotines are, selling like hotcakes. And eventually I ran out of ideas. I was like, all right, what else can I do? What else can I come up with? And so I went to Lisa's blog, and I pulled a bunch of her drawings that she had made, because she'd been drawing these animal people on her own. And I thought, okay, what can I do with these? But at the same time, I had just moved to LA, and I was living in this house up in the Hollywood Hills that was like a friend of a friend of a friend's house. I somehow was paying like $800 a month to live in this glorified closet in a beautiful mansion. And I don't quite know how it was arranged, but I remember the rumors amongst the housemates that it was the 3rd highest elevated house in all of Hollywood, that Johnny Depp had lived there once. There were all sorts of secrets in the houses. And it was on the top of this hill, up this very windy road that I immediately got into a car accident on. And then I didn't have a car, and I was stranded up on this house. And I remember looking out on the deck over all of Hollywood and feeling simultaneously on top of the world and never more isolated and alone. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. And so that was the beginning of the character for me, the idea of this guy who was living in a house like this, who'd had every opportunity for success, but still couldn't find a way to be happy. So it's kind of that married with Lisa's style is where the show came together.
The show was never the same after I left, admit it!
Some people prefer the later years.
The character of BoJack was not written with Will in mind. I think he might be delighted to know. I wasn't thinking, who'd be a great, washed up, sad, lonely actor? Will Arnette. No, it was written just as for BoJack. It was written for this drawing that Lisa Hanawalt had drawn of this horse guy. And then once we were developing the project, we thought, before we pitch this around, it might help to have some talent attached. So Linda Lamontagne is our casting director, and she kind of drew up a list of, here are some actors I think would be right for this. And as soon as I saw Will Arnette's name, I was like, oh my God, yes, that's the guy. Because he's so funny, but there's also a darkness to him. And I feel like in his gravelly performance, you feel like he's lived a life. And there's like a sadness lurking underneath there. But again, he's so funny. I mean, there are lines that we have made BoJack say that I would not have the chutzpah to give to an actor because they're so dopey, but that I knew that Will Arnette could pull them off. Like, I remember in the writer's room, like, looking at a line of script being like, are we really going to keep this line in? This is so stupid. And then we do the table read, and Will Arnett reads it, and it's the funniest thing you've ever heard. And I thought, oh my God, he took our dumbest stuff and he spun it into gold. And that's what you want on a show. You want someone who elevates the material. And I am so blessed with our cast that just every single one of them elevates the material. Every single one of them is better than the jokes you give them. Like, you can give them setups to jokes and they make the setups funny. You can give them sad lines and they make them tragic. You can give them sad lines, they make them tragic and funny at the same time somehow. One of the funniest things I've ever heard was Will Arnett going, "What? What?" The line was "what?" And he kills it.
You're a good sport.
Yeah, you know who that is?
Mr. Peanut Butter?
Paul is also hilarious. I mean, Paul is an incredibly talented actor. His instincts are dead on. And also, I think he preps. I think he looks at the script beforehand and makes choices and thinks, how am I going to do this line? What is the funniest way to do this? So he comes in and he's just overflowing with funny ideas. You know, when I was first writing the character of Mr. Peanut Butter, I initially heard him in my head as like more of like a meathead, more of a deep, kind of gravelly, maybe like a Patrick Warburton type. You know, you can kind of imagine like the big lunkhead. But because we cast Will, who has this deep voice, and then we cast Aaron as Todd, and Aaron also has a pretty deep voice, I felt like if we have a third deep-voiced guy, it's just going to get repetitive and boring. And so I wanted someone who had like a higher register. And I thought Paul had this beautiful lilting quality to him that almost feels like he's skipping across the line, which I think as a foil to BoJack is very funny. That BoJack, he just even in his voice, feels very kind of sunk down and in the muck. Whereas Mr. Peanut Butter is playfully skipping above the muck.
I'm responsible for my own happiness. I can't even be responsible for my own breakfast.
I pitched it as a show that is going to start very fun and goofy, like most adult animated shows, but by the end of its first season, it's going to turn into more of a dramedy along the lines of a live-action show, like Girls or even Mad Men, I think were the examples I used at the time, which felt a little more unprecedented in the world of animation to indulge that much in seriousness and emotion. But that was the idea, is that we were going to trick people by making people think it was a typical animated sitcom, but actually by the end of the season, they'd be going, oh my God, why do I have feelings? Where did this come from? I think in my plan, I always assumed the audience will join us on this ride and go from, oh, this is fun, this is silly, to, oh my God, I have feelings. It never occurred to me that some people might see the silly part and go, not for me, click, and not even know that the rest of the show turns into this totally other thing. I think if I were doing it again, I might try to include more clues at the beginning that this was a more serious show. But even then, I think it's hard to do because there are clues in the beginning. And I think because of the context of it being an adult animated show, people didn't see those clues because they assumed they knew what it was, right? And so they saw the clues that affirmed what they thought it was, but they missed the stuff that didn't point in that direction. In the first episode of the show, BoJack and Diane have like a 2-minute conversation on the fleeting nature of happiness, right? So that should be a hint that like, oh, that's what the show's really interested in. But I remember reading reviews of the first season, and one said, you know, for a show that is meant to be just wall-to-wall jokes, there sure are a lot of scenes that don't have that many jokes. And I thought, you're so close. Your first instinct is, what is this like that I've seen before? And I think what I tried to do was make it kind of like what people had seen before, but also have one foot in something kind of new and challenging. And I think if I were doing it again, I wouldn't spend as much time in the what audiences have seen before. I don't think they needed their hands held as much as I thought they did. I think audiences were ready for something new and something different. Because that's the thing that everybody loved about the first season, is that it did that change, and that it was both of those things, that it wasn't just one or the other. And so when we were working on season 2, I definitely felt the confidence of like, let's go further in that direction, because that's what the show is. That's the sweet spot. That's what people are interested in, is this emotional stuff, while at the same time, it's a goofy, silly, fun cartoon. Where did the theme song come from? That's a great question. So Andy Gowan is our music supervisor, and he kind of put the word out to a bunch of different bands and a bunch of different artists. Hey, you know, here's a new show. were looking for some music, and we got a lot of responses. And the two that kind of rose to the top for me was this very playful, sing-songy group love song, and this very heavy, spooky Patrick Carney and Ralph Carney song. And I remember there was a lot of debate over which song are we going to use. And then we put together this main title sequence. The director Mike Roberts put together this incredible sequence of BoJack kind of going through his day. And we played different songs over it to see what felt right. And we'd bring in people from the crew, we did focus groups, and it was like pretty evenly split. Like, people loved the group love song and people loved the Patrick Carney, Ralph Carney song. And at the end of the day, we thought, can we do both? And so we ended up using the Patrick Carney, Ralph Carney song at the beginning and the group love song at the end. And I think they do different things in really fun ways. I really like that the Carney song has more of a spooky, melancholy feel to it. I think it is a little bit of a hint of what's to come in the show. It does make you think like, oh, this feels a little more dramatic than like a typical animated fun sitcom. And then I think the group love song, kind of the opposite, is so fun and bright. And at the end of some of our episodes, which are really downer endings, like it almost feels like an ironic, like, you know, poke in the ribs. Like it's almost taunting. And it almost brings out the emotionality in a fun new way that is also darkly humorous. And so I've really enjoyed using that song as juxtaposition against all these different endings, especially as the show has gotten more and more serious. It's kind of revealed itself to have new layers to it.
How is it a very famous